Welcome to our Simplify video this week. Simple living involves not only consuming less, but considering the impact of what we buy and consume. In these videos, we consider how we can choose practices that minimize harm to others and the planet, and in turn honor God. After all, He gave us this world to care for, and He asked us to love Him and each other really well. So it's our duty to ensure that when we grocery shop and dispose of waste, when we travel, when we buy clothes, when we make all these kinds of choices, we really are thoughtful about the impacts on others and the world we've been given to look after. Hi everyone, welcome to Grocery Shopping with Tina. I am going to talk today a bit about shopping and how that all fits in with our Simple Living series. So simple living involves thinking about waste, because living simply is not just about buying cheap stuff. It's not just about reducing the amount of money that we spend on stuff, but it's about ensuring that we buy things that are good for others in our world and in the community of the planet that we share with everyone, and for the planet itself. And so when we do that, our weekly grocery shops can become an act of worship to God, because we are being mindful, we're being thoughtful about what we are buying and the impacts that that might be having on people and on the world that we have been entrusted to care for. So I'm going to talk a bit today about groceries, and I've got a bag of groceries here that I'm going to unpack shortly, and you'll see I've used this fabulous bag that the Thrive Under 5 kids made a year or so back, thanks to Hannah. But before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about plastic. So we've been on a low plastic journey as a family for a couple of years now, and I say it's a journey because it's really not easy. So I just want to talk about some problems with plastic. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to ruin your supermarket trips from now on, because when you walk into a supermarket and you become aware of plastic, it's a super depressing place to be, and you realize that you're just surrounded in this entire sea of plastic. So what is the problem with plastic? The major problem with plastic is that it does not biodegrade. It does not break down into something that is useful and that can be used again by like a compost that can be used then to grow plants or grow things in. Plastic just doesn't do that at all. It gets into everything. So increasingly they are finding that plastic is entering into the bloodstream. It's in the air that we breathe. It's in the water that we drink. They've found it in the highest mountains in the world. They've found it in the deepest parts of the ocean in the world. So it really does get everywhere. And because it's toxic, the fact that it's getting into our system so much is a real problem. The larger pieces can be eaten by wildlife. So in the sea, they are finding that fish, marine life like turtles and seabirds as well, are ingesting a lot of this plastic into their systems, and they're finding dead seabirds, they're cutting them open, and they're finding their bellies are full of plastic, because they have confused the plastic. They thought it was fish, they thought it was something edible, and so we're seeing a lot of death within the marine setting as a result of that. So plastic is significantly problematic, and if we can be reducing the amount that we are using, then that's really good. So we do a bit of recycling in New Zealand, which is great, but one of the things people don't realise is that not everything actually gets recycled. Just because it's got the recycling symbol doesn't mean it's actually recycled. So in New Zealand we recycle number 1s and 2s quite well. So that's things like, your milk bottles. If you look on the bottom, you'll see it's got a number 2. We can recycle them quite well. The rest of the numbers, so that you'll see there's 3s, there's 4s, there's 5s, there's 6s, there's 7s. Really, we don't recycle them at all in New Zealand. And sometimes we can send that stuff overseas for recycling. Sometimes countries want it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it ends up costing us to get rid of it, because we live so far away. To transport all of that plastic waste means there's no profit at all in companies choosing to do that. So a lot of plastic, even if there's a nice little recycling symbol, just because it's got the recycling symbol doesn't mean it's actually being recycled. And then the other depressing news is that even the ones that can be recycled, like our number 1s and 2s, can only be recycled like 6 or 7 times. And then that's it, end of life. And they also end up in the landfill. So your soft plastic, so like your plastic bags and lids, like soft rip-off lids like on your sour cream or your yogurt, those sorts of things, they can also be recycled, taken along to supermarkets and other places where there's a nice large bin and you can put all of your soft plastics into this bin, and that feels quite good because, you know, you're recycling. But again, it's not great because a lot of those things are made into like fence posts, which sound really good. We've got, you know, big need for fence posts in New Zealand, but 20 years down the track, what happens to them then? They can't be recycled anymore, and so they also end up in landfill. And meantime, while they're sitting out there in the paddocks doing their fencing job, it rains and the sun beats on it and little bits of plastic flake off, and the plastic goes down and into the ground and then into little run off into little streams and then down into rivers and out into our sea. So the plastic problem is not solved through recycling. The absolute best way to help contribute to the plastic problem diminishing is to buy less of it. And I say less, it's really hard to completely eradicate it. We live in a world where everything seems to be packaged in plastic these days, and for good reason. Like, plastic is amazing. It prolongs the life of things, it's waterproof, there's so many good things about plastic. It's such a bummer that it's so bad for the environment. But there are some alternatives, things that we can be doing a bit differently. Sometimes it is a little bit more time consuming with the shopping because you can't always get everything in one place. And sometimes it is a little bit more pricey as well. The non-plastic options do tend to sometimes be more expensive. So just go slow. Like, if you're going to join this journey, please don't feel that all of a sudden your grocery shop has to be entirely plastic free. It's much better to just make a few small changes, and then after a few more months you might be able to make another few small changes. What we don't want is people feeling really discouraged and giving up entirely, because it's much better to have lots of people doing it averagely than to only have a few people doing it perfectly. So if you're going to come on this journey and try and reduce your plastic stuff, then just, you know, be kind to yourself and go slowly. The other thing that we have done to try and offset the cost of the non-plastic stuff being a bit more pricey is we are eating less meat. And that in itself is something that's quite good for the planet. So the money that's been freed up by not buying meat, we've been able to use for buying stuff that's a bit more pricey, that is not in plastic. So let me show you a few items that I've got in my bag here. So for example, if you're doing your weekly grocery shop and you need to buy oats, then it is possible to buy them in paper. So just a really simple swap like that. Instead of buying your rolled oats in a plastic bag, if you buy them in a paper bag, then you can put the paper bag into recycling, or if you've got a fireplace, you can use it to start your fire at night. Or you can keep the bag, which I know is what Elena does, keep the bag and use it to put other things in. So that's a really simple swap. Now, when we do our fruit and veggie shop, we have purchased a few of these lovely mesh bags. So we don't need to use any of those soft plastic bags that are on offer in the produce section. You can buy a set of like 5 of these bags for, say, $20. Put it on your Christmas wish list if you don't have a spare $20, and maybe someone will buy them for you for Christmas. But they're available in lots of places now, so that's something that you can do. There are things like brands of pasta, for example. Pasta normally comes in plastic, but you can buy brands that just have minimal plastic. So like what I do, because I'm kind of fussy about it, is I would use the pasta and then I would open the box, I'd rip out that little plastic flap, put that into soft plastic recycling, and then this box can be completely recycled and there's no plastic that's going to contaminate it. I would suggest you go for butter for oh so many reasons as opposed to margarine, but a really good reason is also that this is in paper and not in plastic. Cheese is a problem for us because it's something that we often have to compromise on because we love our cheese. And it comes in plastic, and it's really impossible basically to get it not in plastic unless you have heaps of money and want to buy it from a deli. But blue cheese, happily enough, comes in foil, so that's really good. If you can, biscuits and crackers are a huge problem, so it's a compromise for us. So this comes in plastic inside, but the good thing is that there's only one layer of plastic. You know, sometimes you buy biscuits or you buy crackers and then they're in a tray as well as in plastic, so then there's like double plastic. So at least this is only one lot of plastic. It is a compromise. If you're buying a bag of chips, buy a big bag of chips as opposed to little individually wrapped bags of chips because there's a lot less plastic in that. Buying sauces, go for sauces in glass jars. Buying mayonnaises, aioli, that kind of thing, go for glass jars. So just be on the lookout. Like, I'm all the time at the supermarket going, ooh, are there any new products that are in glass this week? It's I know it's a little ridiculous, but anyway, so canned soup as opposed to in pouches is a good idea. But let me just say something. I've got a can of ginger beer here as well. In New Zealand, we recycle aluminium and we recycle cans really well. We don't recycle glass so well. We have to send most of our glass overseas, and so as soon as you're sending stuff offshore, you've got all of that energy of loading it into boats, transporting it, loading it the other end, getting it recycled somewhere else, getting it shipped back to wherever the glass goes after that. So again, heaps of energy is being used for the recycling process. So if we can buy a can of ginger beer as opposed to a bottle of ginger beer, that is heaps better, and then of course so much better either option than actually buying it in plastic. The other thing we do is we've had a go at buying stuff from bulk places. So we have, not far from us, Refill Nation, Te Ratu Peninsula, which I think is a little on the pricey side. There's also the Bulk Barn in Henderson. There's the Source in Kumeu. There's a few places you can go. So we just take our jars and we can get stuff filled up there. And again, not eating meat, only eating meat a couple of times per week does free up a bit of money, because you do end up, unfortunately, buying stuff that's bulk produced in plastic does end up being more cheap, unfortunately, than buying stuff from little local refill places. The other thing is that some butchers will allow you to take your own containers in, and so you can just take it in. Sometimes you leave it, or sometimes they'll do it there for you, and you can say, I'd like 500 grams of mince in this one, and you can either come back and pick it up, or they'll do it on the spot for you. And at supermarkets, as long as it's not during COVID time, you can take your own containers for your deli meats as well. So those are a few little suggestions from me, and I hope that you have found that mildly helpful. And again, if you're going to have a go at this, just start small. There's lots more that we could talk about, but already probably this has been a bit bombarding. So I hope you'll join us. There's a few of us that are on this journey, but we really believe that part of simple living is being mindful and being thoughtful about not only spending less and having less stuff and consuming less to start with, but also being aware of what happens to it once we are finished with it. God in Genesis 2 talked about giving the garden to people to care for and to protect, and so that's part of our role and an act of worship to Him. So I hope that's been helpful. Feel free to ask me any questions, but that's all from me for this week, and next week we will have another video for you from the sustainability group, getting us thinking about simple living that is mindful of others